Okay, I suggest that we'll start. Let me first thank you all the participants that join us for this training, the last in our agenda for this time. First of all, as always, I would like to say that this training is part of the Schemas project. In our presentations, we will mention this and describe and give some more details on it. But the main thing that I want to outline is that the project aims actually at developing a new methodology for integrated assessment of state capture and corruption on sectoral level. The methodology actually consists of 3 different separated but mutually complementary methodologies, and now in today's training we will cover 2 of them. It was piloted in 4 countries: Bulgaria, Romania, Italy, and Spain, and in 3 high-risk sectors that have been selected on the basis of preliminary research that we have done on state capture assessment on national level. So saying this, I'll pass the floor to my colleague Alexander, who is our major statistical expert and major expert on corruption and state capture. He will start with the presentation of one of these methodologies. I suggest that you either use the chat, the Q&A box below for questions if you have during the presentations, or after each presentation we can have a Q&A session. Okay, thank you very much. Again, for the newcomers that they are here with us, Alexander, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Todor. Thank you, everyone, for joining the training today. I'm going to present to you, just a moment to open my slideshow. Okay, I'm going to present to you an instrument to assess state capture at the level of economic sectors. And I will start with the definition of what we mean by state capture, because this term was coined 20 years ago, and in the beginning it was a very narrow concept representing more or less illegal lobbying. But since then, the scope behind the term state capture has expanded dramatically, and to encompass all the different forms of corruption and different aspects of this phenomenon, we came up with this short definition. We define state capture as a combination of different forms of corruption which have a single objective: to secure large-scale and long-term privileges to captors by exploiting the power of governance for private benefit. And in 2019, we built this theoretical model which tries to combine all the views on what state capture is. For example, you can see to the right the different dimensions of state capture, and in the business capture dimension, which we have developed most of all in terms of measurement, you can see the lobbyist walls, which is the classical definition of state capture as defined by Hellman and Coleman. And other scholars and other researchers define, for example, state capture as very close to clientelism. We have clientelism in our political capture dimension. So we have tried to add all the different aspects of state capture and to build a comprehensive model. And you can find more details about it in this publication from 2019. The main aspects are the dimensions, as I mentioned, institutional enablers, which make the whole environment more vulnerable to state capture, and environmental enablers, where phenomena like media capture, judiciary capture, and classical low-level administrative corruption, or petty corruption, as some scholars call it, they are in the environmental enablers, environment where these aspects are not are bad, is more vulnerable to state capture. And now about the instrument state capture assessment diagnostics at the economic sector level, or SCAT ESL. It assesses state capture symptoms and enablers at the national and sectoral levels, and it is part of a larger tool, as Todor mentioned. I will show you the tool in a moment. This is the simplified model we use to estimate or assess state capture at the level of economic sectors, since environmental enablers, they act more or less at the national level or are very difficult to assess at the level of economic sectors. For example, media capture at the level of economic sectors is very difficult to define. And we focus on the business capture dimension, as it is most tangible of all, easiest to quantify, and we are looking here for quantitative scores with this instrument. And our main source of data are expert assessments. As I mentioned, this is part of a larger system, or Schemas integrated tool. Usually, a state capture, the process of diagnostics and ideally response starts with state capture assessment diagnostics, or SCAT, at the national level, then followed by economic sector level. Then it narrows down even more through big data analytics, which is capable of providing information for particular public organizations and their vulnerabilities, and for particular companies. And this could be followed through with an instrument called MACPI, which is oriented to public organizations. It's a management tool. And finally, through investigations, either by investigative journalists or by the responsible authorities. And you can find this, describe this in much more detail in this methodological toolkit with all the formula, algorithms, and suggestions how to implement this set of instruments. Let me just briefly go through the key steps. The process of implementing SCAT ESL starts with a mapping report, which gathers some background information. Then a selection of respondents is done. Several lists of groups of experts are compiled. And then all the potential respondents are invited to take part in an anonymous online survey. Finally, the state capture indicators are computed. I will give you examples how this is done. And of course, the final step is the analysis of the results and integration with other instruments like big data and MACPI. The first step, the mapping report, it basically involves gathering some information about the particular sector in the particular country where SCAT ESL is implemented. And the main thing is to list all the relevant public organizations. And by relevant, we mean organizations which can regulate the sector, which have control and sanctioning functions, and which are large clients in the sectors, or invest a lot of money through public procurement. Also, we list in this tab NGO and branch organizations for the purposes of selecting respondents, potential respondents or experts after that. And we also list different registries relevant to the sector, like local procurement registries or registries of subsidies or registries of allowed medicines, for example, in the case of the pharma sectors and so on. And finally, a short review of potential state capture related incidents could be included, of course, based only on reputable media. And the largest companies could also be listed to provide some helpful context for the final analysis. And this is an example of a table which helps the researchers to put things more in a systemic manner. The public organizations are listed, and it is marked whether a public organization is relevant because it is a big client, because it has regulatory or control functions. If neither of the three is marked, then the public organization is probably not relevant for this sector. Then the selection of the respondents follows the information gathered from the mapping report. And the idea here is to have as many experts as possible. The only requirement is that they are familiar with the sectors and with at least some of the public organizations included in the list, because these experts are asked to assess the public organizations they are familiar with. And the idea here is that we are looking for areas where the opinions and views of all the experts converge into the view that there is some problem in this area, regardless of whether it is something related to the sector, so the business capture dimension, or if it is related to the public organizations related to the sector. And of course, discrepancies between public officials and external experts can also be analyzed, but our main goal here is to find areas where all the experts more or less agree that are problematic, and you will see examples in a minute. The experts are public officials who are currently working in management or expert level in the public administration, in judiciary, prosecution, and they're between 1/3 and half of the participants in the survey. We recommend that public officials are 1/3 of the participants, and external experts are more or less a balanced selection of NGO representatives, media, academia, ex-public officials, and even heads of large businesses if they are willing to participate. And of course, if they are familiar with public organizations and with the sector as a whole. And the next step is the actual survey, which is conducted online. It is anonymous, and the only recommendation here is that a software which can handle filters is used. Filters means that, for example, here the participant selected that they are familiar with only the first and the second organization, and the questionnaire requires that the next set of questions are asked only for these two organizations, and you can see here the software handles it, and this is more or less it, and of course it should be anonymous. This is very important. Then after we have completed the survey, and we recommend at least 50 experts from all groups, in total 50 experts in total, we move to the computation of indicators. And here I have listed the main indicators. There are 3 levels of indicators, with institutional enablers, for example, being the highest level, and it is composed of 4 level 2 indicators, and each of the 4, with the exception of private interest bias, is composed of 3 level 3 sub-indicators. It is probably a bit abstract at this point, but let me show you an example how the computations are done, and you will understand immediately what this all means. So let's say we want to compute the business state capture main level 1 indicator. We have 3 level 2 indicators, and these are general monopolization, which is the percentage of experts who believe there is any reason to suspect the existence of a monopoly, oligopoly, cartel in the sector. So you can see below that 85% of the experts marked that there are such reasons to suspect the existence. So the score for this indicator is 85. Then the ineffectiveness of anti-monopoly laws is the percentage of experts who answered that the law for this sector rather helps the monopolization of the sector than preventing it. These are 21%. These numbers are for Italy, the wholesale of fuels. So 21 of the Italian experts believe that in this sector, the anti-monopoly laws rather help the formation of monopolies. And finally, the specific monopolization pressure is the percentage of experts who think that there is at least one of the 4 specific problems related potentially to state capture and to procurement capture we have listed here, and these are 60% of the experts mention at least one of these. Some, of course, mention several. And these level 2 numbers are then crunched into the business state capture pressure score for the whole sector for Italy, and it is a weighted average with specific monopolization pressure having the same weight as the other 2 level 2 indicators, because we think that it is the most important from a theoretical perspective. And once we have computed these numbers, we can move to the analysis. And if you notice here, we start bottom up. We started from the level 3 indicators computation, which are basically the percentage of answers to a particular question. And then a simple formula is applied to compute the higher level indicator. In the analysis, we move the other way, top down. We start with the highest level concept here, for example, the business state capture pressure, which is not very informative because it is very general. It provides some general insight into what's going on. For example, we can see that Spain seems to have some problems with construction mainly, and also wholesale pharmaceuticals, while Bulgaria has more of a problem with wholesale of fuels. However, the details are really important for this analysis. So these high-level concepts are mainly used for long-term monitoring and for giving some general idea what a situation is in a country in a particular sector. But when moving down to general monopolization pressure and especially to specific monopolization pressure, we can see where the actual problems really are. And these are the level 2 indicators. Here, the institutional enablers are the level 1 concept. But when we reach the level 3 or the lowest level of indicators, then we really can do detailed and deep analysis of why these results are like this. For example, the private interest bias is a level 2 indicators, which is very important. It doesn't consist of several level 3 indicators. It is an indicator by itself, level 2, and it means the percentage of respondents who, after being asked, in your opinion, how effective is the control and sanctioning for this public organization? Sorry, I think here the text got cut somehow, unfortunately. In any case, the question is if control and sanctions are unbiased in the particular organization which the experts are assessing. And this is the percentage of respondents who answer that control and imposing sanctions are done selectively, and the choice of whom to control or sanction follows private interests. So this is really close to the actual definition of state capture, and this is why this indicator is so important, and it directly stems from the answers of the experts. And you can see here some aggregated results for the whole sector from all public organizations. When going even further down, we can see actual scores for the different public organizations. These are numbers for Bulgaria. So here, as you can see, the average for Bulgaria is 17%, which is rather high for this particular indicator. And here you can see how the different public organizations perform, and you can see that the highest scores were for the municipalities, for the Directorate for National Construction Supervision, and for Road Infrastructure Agency. And later in the training today, Todor will give some examples what hard data, what quantitative results from the big data analysis we can see which support this expert assessment that there is some private interest bias for this organization. And here you can see the level 3 indicators, which are the types of specific monopolization pressure, for example, are level 3 indicators. And this is now much more to the point, much more concrete. For example, 90% of the experts in Spain think that a specific company or a small number of companies win too many public tenders in the construction sector. So this is the particular problem that construction has in Spain. While in Bulgaria, this is also the case. This number is also very high. However, also the control and/or sanctions are applied selectively, which helps particular companies, is also selected very often. And of course, in other sectors, this pattern of answers might be completely different. In some sectors, will provide illegitimate competitive advantage might be the most common answer, and there the analysis could focus on the legislation, while here the analysis should focus on the public procurement. And in cases where control and/or sanctions are applied selectively, then the analysis focuses on the public organizations responsible for control and sanctioning. And this is the link to the next stages of the integrated tool. We asked the experts which of these red flags are actually most indicative that there is state capture in the sector. And you can see their scores. The higher the number, the more relevant this red flag is. And these are big data red flags, which Todor will present in a moment. And I have outlined two of them. Tenders are won by very few companies, or ultimate or owners rather. And one or few companies tend to win very often tenders issued by a single contractor organization. So according to the experts, these red flags are quite indicative for state capture influences. And this allows us to move to the final stage of the analysis, the lowest level, which is the big data analysis. And from there, the only thing which could be done further is investigations of particular cases. But let me stop here and thank you for your attention. To the left is the methodological toolkit you can download and read all the details of how to apply these tools. And to the right is the 2019 publication about state capture, which contains more theoretical background and more interesting results from the piloting of this tool. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sasha. So if you have any questions, please write them in the Q&A section screen. Okay, you have to see my screen now. As Sasha mentioned during his presentation, I'll present our methodology and the corresponding web-based tool that we developed, which allow us to make a risk analysis of corruption-related behavior in public procurement. As I said in the very beginning, this was done within a project supported by DG Home of the European Commission, together with 3 other participants: e-crime research group at the University of Trento, Italy, Expert Forum, which is a policy research NGO from Romania, and the Civil Foundation, investigative journalist from Spain. I will not stop here because Alexander already showed you this model. As you can see, we use the same theoretical model and theoretical framework for the state capture concept in all of our methodologies. So they are consistent with this. The only thing that I want to highlight is the second paragraph here on the screen, that one of the key characteristics of state capture is the public traces it leaves behind. That it means that state capture needs to affect public policy, and in this way, and for that reason, it leaves visible effects which can be discovered by suitable pattern finding methods. And both methodologies that Sasha present and the one that I'm presenting are actually this kind of pattern finding methods that try to quantify the results of state capture process, because state capture processes are in most of the cases hidden and very difficult to be uncovered. The methodology that I'm presenting is focused on only one component of business capture pressure, and it is privileged access to procurement. However, as you will see in my presentation, the risk analysis of corruption-related behavior and state capture in public procurement refer also to the other components of business state capture, like using lobbyist laws, or having privileged legal status, or ineffectiveness of anti-monopoly laws, and so on and so on, for gaining private benefits on the account of public one. This was already said by Alexander, that this is an integrated approach which combines 3 mutually complemented methodologies. I will not stop on it. This is the same toolkit that Sasha presented already. You can find it on the web, and it actually presents in big details the 3 methodologies, but also all the practical steps that can help you or any other person to implement one or all of these methodologies, including the computational models, including the questionnaires when you have a questionnaire, and so on and so on. So all the knowledge that is necessary for implementing one or more of these methodologies. The main objective of the risk analysis of public procurement is to monitor occurrence of suspicious behavior related to state capture and corruption in public procurement. And this suspicious behavior could be, for example, companies that are winning tenders shortly after their incorporation or shortly after they have been established, or companies dependent exclusively on public procurement funds. Using this methodology, you can see that there are companies that, for example, have more than 90% of their the annual turnover coming from a single public authority through tendering procedures. So it means that these companies are in a way totally dependent on the tenders. And something more, if in many of the cases, so very often, they are dependent on a single or at most two contracting entities, so two public organizations, which means that there should be some, I would say, hidden and not so legal links between the buyer and supplier in this case. Some other suspicious behavior include also favoritism by certain governments, and you can see at the end the red flags for this, and so on and so on. The second main objective when we developed this methodology was to be was that it is designed for real-time monitoring. So it means that it could be used as part or as an integral part of e-procurement system of the countries for monitoring the irregularities of in public procurement process and for reacting on these irregularities during the procurement process and not after it, as in our case, when we use only historical data for the last 10 years to show how this can work. But in fact, it is designed to be real-time application. Of course, if the controlling and regulatory authorities in a country wants to apply it. It increased transparency because it offers integrated analytics covering different type of data. And last but not least, this methodology was designed to be scalable and transferable across countries and sectors. It is piloted on 3 sectors, as I said, and 4 countries, but it could be used in other sectors and countries, let's say with a very small modifications. To apply this methodology, we developed this web-based analytical platform, which is free for use, but it requires a registration, and which offers several interactive features for doing some analysis. I should say here that actually all the analytics that have been implemented through this web-based platform could be done even manually. The computational models and methods are not so complex, and they could be done either using some specialized statistical software or even Excel. Of course, it will take a bit more time for this. The methodology and the platform covers 3 types of data, and this is one of the most innovative part of this methodology, because the existing similar tools actually usually works with one major type of data like public procurement data, and very, very rarely they combine them with other types of data. And but our methodology offers a full integration of public procurement data taken from the tenders electronic daily database. This is the official database of European Commission, and the data are freely available on their website. Corporate data coming from public business registers in the countries, and some from private data providers. I'll tell you a bit more about this in a minute. And news media data coming from online news websites. When you have to integrate three different types of or kinds of data, of course, there are a lot of challenges that you faced with. And I outlined here the main one just to give you some examples. If you want to not only to implement such a methodology, but also to analyze such data, to have them in mind, because these challenges actually give you an idea what you can expect from the results of this data, of this analytics. The first challenge is multi-name entity recognition and matching, both by suppliers and buyers. It means for companies and for contracting authorities or public institutions of that data, so of public procurement data. Multi-name entity recognition means that a single entity, never mind whether it's a public institution or a company, could exist in the database with several names. Believe me, there are companies that exist with more than 24 different names in this database. In many cases, it is also the unique company IDs are also missing in the database. So you have to use some other technical means for matching different names. And the mean that we use, the method that we use, is to look at the other reference fields, as we call them, or other reference information about these companies or about these public organizations, in order to match the different names of one of the same organization. For example, you can look at the postal address, at websites, contact information that exists for these entities, and so on, to decide whether two names belong to the same organization or not. Parent-child matching of corporate data refers to the problem that corporate data and public procurement data works actually with separated legal entities. But as you know, in the real world, you don't have only separated legal entities, but very often these legal entities have links between them, especially when we're talking about business enterprises, about companies. The companies have their subsidiaries, subsidiaries have their shareholders, shareholders have again their subsidiaries, and so on. So they can have a very complex ownership networks. And of course, when you're talking about corruption and state capture, it is much more important to track and monitor whether a given beneficial owner or the final owner at the end, at the top of the hierarchical pyramid of company ownership, gain public funds through procurement, rather than looking at the separate companies that this owner has, because you can have economic conglomerate, and especially in when we're talking about oligarchs in our countries, it's normal that when oligarchs control sometimes dozens of companies, even hundreds of legal entities. And if you have the picture for all of them as a whole, it's completely different than for a single company out of them. And last but not least, we added to these two types of data, public procurement data and corporate data, we added also data from news media that refer to suspicious behavior of companies or public authorities or contracting authorities. So it means that we look for news articles, some investigative journalistic articles that show that there are some suspicious cases may be related to state capture and corruption in using public funds through public procurement. And we try to link these articles to the list of companies and contracting authorities. What we found is that our initial idea to look directly for the names of the companies and contracting authorities is actually not working, because only for these 3 sectors and 4 countries, we do have more than 40,000 companies in our database, and some 3,000 and more public authorities. And if you want to search articles about this, all these companies and public authorities, you get a lot of non-relevant articles. So articles that are presenting just the normal business activity, or some news about public authorities that they're organizing some events and so on and so on. So even some more complex queries, search queries that we use, were not able to grasp or collect the reliable information. So we implemented another approach. We set up a search queries for corruption and public procurement. So we identify, let's say, all the possible articles that are talking about corruption and public procurement, and then we filter the data set of articles for the names of companies and public authorities. To do this, we used an external service offered by one company called Sensica. You can see it, which is a specialized media monitoring company. There are also other services of this kind, and you can use them because they offer you a lot of possibilities to do this screening of media articles. For example, Newsweek, but also CrowdTangle and NewsRed and so on. There are a lot of media monitoring services out there. So the Schemas web-based analytical platform consists of 4 major sections: ranking, profiling, red flagging, and market sizing. And here you can see the technical specification guide, which actually is available also as part of the help center of the platform. And it gives very, first of all, it's a manual how to use the platform, but second, it gives all the details how every indicator or red flag is calculated with the mathematical formula. So you can use it also as a reference tool if you want to make similar analysis. The ranking, I'll go briefly through the 4 major sections or features of the platform. The ranking is available for both companies and contracting entities by location. It means that you can do a ranking only on a for a given city or town, by country and by sector. And there are different metrics that you can do this ranking, like contract awards frequency, size of contract awards, so the amount of contracts, and so on and so on. Here is just an example of the ranking. You see, in this case, on the left, I choose from the available filters international company ranking per industry. I choose two countries and 1 sector, wholesale fuels, and it ranks because this is for the total value of contracts. So how much each company has received from public procurement, and the system ranks the companies according the total value, and at the top is always the companies with the highest values. Sorry. Profiling, the profiling section and feature offers an interactive analytics which combines results from the 3 type of data that we have, public procurement, corporate, and media, and offers also some red flags indicators. It visualizes the assessment of the risk of state capture and corruption within particular contracting entity or awarded company. It visualizes also some additional metrics like parent-child corporate relationships, information about offshore involvement, and so on and so on. Here are the data points or the different data that you can get in the profiling section for each company or for each contracting entity. I'll not stop on this. Here are some examples, but I'll go directly to a live example, let's say. This is the company profile of Automagistrale EAD. This is highway. It means highways in Bulgaria. So this is a construction company, state-owned construction company, specialized in constructing highways and roads. You can see it has for the 10 years that we have from 2010 to 2019, it has 15 tenders on an amount of 879 million euro. And as you can see here below, most of this, even 90-something% of this amount, have been received actually in 1 year only. And here in government terms, you can see that this happened actually during the last government of our Prime Minister Borisov. And here below, you can see some other information about this. And what is important, you can see that it received this only from 1 contracting authority, and this is the agency Road Infrastructure, again, a state-owned agency. And if you go at the top, you can see that there are also some suspicious activity news that are talking about possible corruption and so on. Here you can open each of the news in original. And what means it this? It means that, first of all, a state-owned public authority gives actually 100% of the funding for this state-owned company, and this happened only during 1 government of during the term of a single government. And when you see this is the profile of the contracting authority of the state agency Road Infrastructure, and you go below, you can see that among the other suppliers of services, let's say, the highways company, this Automagistrale company, actually got the highest percentage of funding for all these 10 years. And this whole case is actually very well investigated by several journalists, and they shows the not very legal, I would say, relationships that exist between some top-level politicians in this government, the top management of the state-owned agency, and the state-owned company. And just to clarify, according to the national laws, this state-owned agency should offer should conduct public tenders not only for the state-owned company, but for all the construction companies in Bulgaria. But guess what? During the term of this cabinet, of the last cabinet, it is only one company, the state company, that owns the biggest portions of money. The risk indicators, some of them that I already show you in the profiling section, are based on theoretical and methodological framework for state capture assessment, and actually they look exactly on state capture process, not so much on corruption as a single act. These risk indicators are like that tenders are won by very few companies or ultimate owners. Tenders are often won by very new unknown companies, so companies established just very short before that to won their first tender. And so on and so on. So based on the theoretical concept, we developed a set of risk indicators, and then based on these risk indicators, we developed some red flags based on linked data between the three type of data that we have: corporate data, public procurement data, and media data. The four groups of red flags are measuring concentration level, buyer concentration index, supplier concentration index, high exposure to procurement, incorporation time proximity index, and so on and so on. I will not stop on all of them. As I said, you can find their description in the technical guide in the web platform. I just want to give you an example. For example, when we're talking about procurement exposure ratio by number of employees, this is a red flag which measures the number of employees, the amount received from public tenders divided by number of employees. And when you rank all the companies by this ratio, you can see these companies that are that have highest ratios. So let's say they have something like €500,000 per capita or per employee, per single employee, which means that these are companies that do not have enough employees to implement the activities that they actually pretend that they implemented. Each of these red flag indicates a risk situation related to state capture and corruption, either in the contracting authority or in the awarded company. One red flag doesn't mean that the company or the public institution is corrupted or is involved in corruption, but when you have accumulation of several red flags for the same institution or company, or for the same sector, or for the same country, then it this is an indication for problems that are related to state capture and corruption in this organization or in this sector or in this company. As I said, when you use red flags, it gives you a picture like this, where the companies are ranked according to the red flags. You can see the red flags in one of the columns of the table, and I just want to show you some live examples of red flags. Just a moment. Here is a red flag for so-called government terms volatility. So to see whether there are companies that are favoritized by a given government. And this is a ranking for government of Plamen Oresharski in Bulgaria in 2013-2014. And here are the companies. And as you can see, the red flags decreased. So this is a visualization of that help you to understand which are most risky companies in this case and cases. And let's take one of these company, Sofia Gas. When you look at the company profile, this is part of the profiling section, and you can find it from there also, if you know what to look for exactly, which company to look for exactly. You can see something very interesting. Here is this red flag, and you can see that actually this company started to win tenders exactly during the term of Plamen Oresharski cabinet. And of course, some of these tenders have been won in the next cabinet. This is actually interim cabinet, which lasted only for 3 months. So this is something very normal, because you know that the procurement process is quite long. Sometimes it takes more than a year. So it's normal that that tenders that have been that this company applied for during the cabinet of Plamen Oresharski have been, the contracts for these tenders have been signed even some months after the cabinet ends. So if you look at this, you can say that this company actually disappeared, but it's not this is not the case. Actually, the company still exists. It is still working, but this shows that actually this company was, there are some reasons that this company wants public tenders only during the term of one given political cabinet, which is very suspicious. And if you look at the other information about this company, you'll see that actually it is really a suspicious case. Even this company was not highlighted in the media, or at least we didn't found media articles that will appear here, if they exist, just below the name of the company. This is how the red flagging could work. Sorry. This is another example for red flags, and I want to finish with something more. In addition to the single red flags that you can look, you can also do some aggregated analytics that is based on statistical computation of red flags data extracted from the web platform. So not looking at separated red flags and separated companies or public authorities, but to extract the data, for example, for a given red flag, and to make some additional statistical analysis of this data. This provides better overview of vulnerability to suspicious behavior in public procurement, both on the sides of a given organization, a company or a contracting entity, but also on a country level. And it also allow for designing of preventive measures and policies either on institutional or on sectoral and national level. Here is such an example for aggregated analytics based on the buyer concentration index. What does it mean? It means that if you look at the top, you have number of red flag buyers for each country. So red flagged buyers means that these buyers have concentrated more than 60, 70, 80, 90% of their money that they allocate through public tenders to very few companies. In this case, here at the top right corner, you have 26 buyers in Bulgaria that concentrated more than 90% of their money to 52 suppliers. It means that they concentrated, each of them in average concentrated, let's say, to 2 suppliers. And the total amount of money that have went to these suppliers is 1.6 billion euro. And this is, and if you look comparatively across the countries and across the different concentration levels, you can see that actually Bulgaria and Spain have the highest levels of concentration. And it means that they're more prone to state capture and corruption, that processes that allows this type of concentration of procurement concentration between buyers and suppliers. Here is another example of this kind of aggregated analytics using the red flag of procurement exposure per employee ratio that I already told you about. On the left side, or in the columns, you have average amount from tenders per employee, and on the right side with the line, you have the number of companies that ranks highest according to the ratio of awarded amounts per employee. So in Bulgaria, we have 21 companies that have in average almost €500,000 per employee. And you can see that, for example, in Spain, this ratio is much smaller. It's less than €300,000. While in Italy, guess what? There is not a single company that is ranked according to, that is red flagged, let's say. This shows that the companies that are red flagged from the other countries actually have good that this is a real sign for a real problem, because otherwise, if it is normal to have companies that won more than about $500,000 per employee, then this will exist also in Italy. But as you can see, they're not such Italian companies. The last section and feature is market sizing. It gives you just a background picture about the macro level analysis on both public procurement data and corporate data. For example, you can see what is the share of public procurement in given sectoral turnover. So to see that, for example, in Bulgaria, in construction sector has about 27, if I'm not wrong, percent of the whole annual turnover of the whole construction sector. So this function is used mostly for background purposes, let's say, to give you the background picture. Here are different examples, and I want to finish with the challenges to risk analysis that we faced with and that we needed to solve somehow. First of all, our initial idea to produce all the red flags and all the computations, let's say, to be on sectoral level, actually we found that this is not possible because of the, I would say, reality that exists. There is a controversy between the parent-child relationships that we use and the theoretical model of state capture, let's say. State capture mechanisms actually undermine sectoral approach because I'll try to explain this. When you have a group of companies controlled by the same person, these companies are not from a given sector only. They belong to different economic sectors. And of course, the owner of these companies wants that all the companies are winning public tenders, and it is not he is not acting according to the sectors. So so the owner doesn't say, okay, I'll use some corruption and state capture mechanisms only in benefit of my construction companies, but the other companies that dealing, for example, with renewable energy will stay aside. No, the state capture mechanisms that are used by persons controlling groups of companies actually are used to benefit all the companies in the group. So to let's say to extract as much as possible public funding, and this is why many of the red flags and some of the computations are not possible on sectoral level, because we have to cut, let's say, to do this analysis on sectoral level, we have to cut and disaggregate the companies' networks. Of course, inconsistency and availability of procurement and corporate data are also a big challenge, and there are several ways how it could be at least partially overcome, but still this is a big problem. And last but not least, availability and reliability of media data, including identification of relevant media content. As you can imagine, if you look about news articles about suspicious behavior, you have to rely, you have to be sure that you selected only reliable information, and it is very important to have some additional checks both on the news sources that you use and on the content that you scrape and that you use for the analysis, to be sure that the information you use is not only topical but also reliable. I will stop with this. Thank you very much, and I'll be happy to answer your questions if you have. Thank you very much once again.